The story of the Roman Empire is one of ambition, innovation, glory, and tragedy. It is the tale of how a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River grew into the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen. At its height, Rome ruled over vast territories stretching from the windswept frontiers of Britain to the deserts of North Africa, from the rugged mountains of Spain to the fertile lands of the Middle East. Its roads connected continents, its legions conquered kingdoms, and its laws shaped the foundation of modern civilization. Yet the empire that seemed invincible eventually fell. Its cities were sacked, its armies scattered, and its mighty institutions crumbled. How could something so powerful collapse into ruin? Was it enemy invasions, political corruption, economic decline, or something deeper in the very fabric of Rome itself? In this documentary, we will trace the journey of Rome from its legendary founding to its rise as a superpower, from the heights of imperial glory to the final days of chaos and fall. We will meet the kings, generals, emperors, and ordinary citizens who lived through these times. We will uncover the triumphs that made Rome eternal in memory and the mistakes that brought it crashing down. This is the story of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Our journey begins not with fact alone, but with legend. According to Roman mythology, the story starts with twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, descendants of the Trojan hero Aeneas. As infants, they were abandoned along the banks of the Tiber River, left to die. Instead, fate intervened. A she-wolf discovered the crying babies and nursed them until a shepherd found and raised them. As they grew older, the brothers decided to build a city near the place of their rescue. Yet destiny took a dark turn. An argument erupted over who would rule the new settlement. In a tragic act that would shape Roman identity, Romulus killed Remus and became the first king of Rome in 753 BCE, giving the city his name. Rome began as a monarchy ruled by a series of kings. Under their leadership, the city grew from a cluster of huts into a small but organized settlement. They built temples, established laws, and laid the foundations of Roman religion and culture. Yet early Rome was not isolated. It was surrounded by powerful neighbors, including the Etruscans to the north and the Latin tribes nearby. Over time, Rome absorbed influences from these cultures. The Etruscans taught the Romans engineering, architecture, and religious rituals. The Latins shared language and customs. This blending of traditions created a society that was practical, adaptable, and fiercely ambitious. But kingship would not last. Around 509 BCE, after the tyranny of the last king, Tarquin the Proud, the Romans rose in revolt. They vowed never again to be ruled by a king and created a new system of government, the Roman Republic. This moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would eventually transform Rome from a city-state into a superpower. The birth of the Roman Republic in 509 BC changed the course of history. No longer ruled by kings, Rome embraced a system of government designed to prevent absolute power from falling into the hands of one man. At its heart was the Senate, a council of wealthy and influential citizens who guided policy and advised elected officials known as consuls. Each year, 2 consuls were chosen to lead the government and command the armies. Their power lasted only 1 year, ensuring no single ruler could dominate. This system of checks and balances gave Rome stability while allowing talented individuals to rise through merit rather than birthright. Yet Rome was not a democracy in the modern sense. Most power remained in the hands of the patricians, the wealthy landowning class. Ordinary citizens, called plebeians, had limited rights at first, but through centuries of struggle known as the conflict of the orders, they gradually won greater representation. Tribunes were created to protect the rights of common people, and written laws like the 12 Tables gave all Romans a sense of justice and order. As the Republic matured, it grew more ambitious. Rome began conquering neighboring territories in central Italy, forging alliances and demanding loyalty from defeated foes. Roman soldiers, disciplined and relentless, built roads and fortifications that extended Roman influence far beyond the city itself. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had transformed from a small regional power into the dominant force of the Italian peninsula. Yet greater challenges awaited across the sea. In the rich and powerful city of Carthage, Rome would find a rival unlike any it had faced before. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome had unified most of Italy under its rule. But across the Mediterranean lay Carthage, a wealthy maritime empire based in North Africa. Its trading fleets controlled vast territories, and its coffers overflowed with riches from trade and agriculture. Sooner or later, these two powers were destined to clash. The first conflict, known as the First Punic War, erupted in 264 BCE over control of Sicily. Rome, traditionally a land power, had to build a navy from scratch to challenge Carthage's dominance at sea. Through determination and innovation, Rome adapted quickly, inventing boarding devices called corvus that turned sea battles into land combat, where Roman soldiers excelled. After more than 2 decades of fighting, Rome emerged victorious, claiming Sicily as its first province outside the Italian mainland. But Carthage was not defeated yet. The Second Punic War brought one of history's greatest military commanders to the stage, Hannibal Barca. In 218 BCE, Hannibal led his army, including war elephants, on a daring march from Spain across the Alps into Italy. The Romans were stunned. At battles like Trebia, Trasimene, and especially Cannae, Hannibal inflicted devastating defeats, killing tens of thousands of Roman soldiers. Yet Rome refused to surrender. Displaying remarkable resilience, it raised new armies and adopted a strategy of wearing Hannibal down rather than facing him directly. Eventually, the Roman general Scipio Africanus invaded North Africa, forcing Hannibal to return home. At the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE, Rome defeated Carthage once and for all, ending the Second Punic War and cementing Rome's place as the dominant Mediterranean power. A third and final war came decades later when Rome, fearing Carthage's revival, besieged the city in 149 BCE. After a brutal campaign, Carthage was utterly destroyed in 146 BCE. Its walls were torn down, its people enslaved, and its lands claimed by Rome. The destruction of Carthage removed Rome's greatest rival and opened the door to further expansion across Spain, Greece, and beyond. Yet with power came wealth, and with wealth came corruption, ambition, and civil strife that would eventually shake the foundations of the Republic itself. By the 1st century BCE, Rome had become the greatest power in the Mediterranean. Its territories stretched across Spain, Greece, North Africa, and parts of the Near East. But with conquest came immense wealth, and that wealth began to corrupt the political system. Senators competed for power, generals built personal armies, and ordinary citizens suffered as the gap between rich and poor widened. Amid this turmoil rose one of history's most famous figures, Gaius Julius Caesar. Born into a noble but not wealthy family in 100 BCE, Caesar was ambitious, charismatic, and brilliant. He began his career as a politician and military commander, quickly gaining popularity among the people for his reforms and generosity. Caesar's military campaigns in Gaul, modern-day France, made him a legend. Over 8 years, he conquered vast territories, defeated powerful tribes, and even crossed into Britain, something no Roman army had done before. His commentaries on the Gallic War not only reported his victories, but also showcased his skill as a writer and propagandist, shaping his image as Rome's greatest general. But Caesar's growing power alarmed many in the Senate, especially his rival Pompey. When the Senate ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, Caesar faced a choice: give up power or seize it. In 49 BCE, he made his decision. Leading his army across the Rubicon River, Caesar defied the Senate and sparked a civil war. His words, according to legend, were simple: the die is cast. After years of fighting, Caesar defeated Pompey and his allies, becoming the most powerful man in Rome. In 44 BCE, he declared himself dictator for life, introducing reforms to stabilize the republic. He granted citizenship to conquered peoples, restructured debts, and planned massive building projects. But his concentration of power frightened many senators who feared the end of the republic. On the Ides of March in 44 BCE, a group of conspirators led by Brutus and Cassius assassinated Caesar in the Senate House, hoping to restore the old system. Instead, his death plunged Rome into chaos, leading to more civil wars and the rise of his adopted heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. After the assassination of Julius Caesar, Rome was thrown into yet another series of civil wars. At the center of the storm stood three key figures: Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general, Lepidus, a powerful statesman, and Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. Together, they formed the Second Triumvirate, vowing to punish Caesar's assassins and restore order to the Republic. They defeated Caesar's killers, Brutus and Cassius, at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. But unity did not last. Ambition and rivalry soon tore the triumvirate apart. Lepidus faded from power, while Mark Antony allied himself with Cleopatra of Egypt, raising fears in Rome that he planned to build an Eastern empire. Octavian seized the opportunity. At the naval battle of Actium in 31 BCE, his forces defeated Antony and Cleopatra, who both later took their own lives. With no rivals left, Octavian became the sole ruler of Rome. In 27 BCE, he accepted the title Augustus, meaning the revered one, marking the official birth of the Roman Empire. Though he claimed to restore the Republic's traditions, real power now rested with him as princeps, or first citizen. He controlled the military, finances, and administration while maintaining the illusion of republican institutions. Under Augustus, Rome entered a golden age known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. For nearly 2 centuries, the empire experienced unprecedented stability, economic prosperity, and cultural flourishing. Roads and aqueducts connected distant provinces. Cities thrived with theaters, temples, and forums. Roman law unified the empire, while Latin language and Roman customs spread across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Augustus also reformed the military, creating a professional standing army and the Praetorian Guard to protect the emperor. He encouraged literature and the arts, with poets like Virgil and Horace glorifying Rome's destiny. By the time of his death in 14 CE, Augustus had transformed Rome from a fragile republic torn by civil war into a powerful empire that stretched across 3 continents. Yet beneath the glory lay growing challenges that future emperors would struggle to control. At the height of the Roman Empire, life varied greatly depending on where you lived and your social status. In the bustling capital of Rome, more than 1 million people filled the city's crowded streets. The skyline was dominated by grand temples, markets, theaters, and the mighty Colosseum, where gladiators fought before roaring crowds. For the wealthy elite, life was filled with luxury. Senators and rich merchants lived in spacious villas decorated with mosaics, sculptures, and fountains. They hosted lavish banquets with exotic foods like peacock, oysters, and fine wines imported from distant provinces. Education and philosophy were highly valued, and wealthy Romans often hired Greek tutors for their children. But most Romans were not rich. Ordinary citizens, known as plebeians, lived in small apartments called insulae, many of which were poorly built and prone to fires. Life could be harsh, but the emperors kept the people entertained with free games at the Circus Maximus and distributions of grain, a policy known as bread and circuses. Roman society was also built on slavery. Millions of enslaved people worked in households, farms, mines, and even as teachers or doctors. Some gained freedom and became successful, while others endured brutal conditions. Religion played a central role in Roman life. People worshipped a pantheon of gods like Jupiter, Mars, and Venus, offering sacrifices at temples to seek favor and protection. Over time, the empire absorbed gods from conquered regions, creating a diverse spiritual landscape. Trade and travel flourished under the Pax Romana. Roman roads stretched over 250,000 miles, allowing merchants, soldiers, and officials to move quickly across the empire. Goods like olive oil, wine, spices, and silk flowed through Roman markets, linking distant provinces into one vast economy. Daily life reflected Rome's power and diversity. From the sunlit villas of the rich to the crowded streets of ordinary citizens, the empire was a world of contrasts bound together by Roman law, language, and culture. By the 3rd century CE, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia, ruling over tens of millions of people. Yet its very size became a source of weakness. Governing such vast lands required immense resources, and cracks began to appear in the imperial system. In 235 CE, the assassination of Emperor Alexander Severus triggered a century of turmoil historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. During this period, Rome faced a perfect storm of disasters: invasions by barbarian tribes, economic collapse, deadly plagues, and constant civil wars. Emperors rose and fell with alarming speed. Many were military commanders who seized power through force only to be overthrown or murdered within months. In just 50 years, Rome saw more than 20 emperors, most dying violently. This instability weakened central authority and drained the empire's resources. External threats multiplied. Germanic tribes like the Goths and Vandals raided Roman frontiers, while the powerful Sassanid Empire in Persia defeated Roman armies in the east, even capturing Emperor Valerian in 260 CE, a humiliation Rome had never suffered before. Meanwhile, the economy spiraled downward. Heavy taxes and debased currency led to inflation. Trade declined, cities shrank, and many farmers abandoned their lands to escape crushing debts. Plague also swept through the empire, killing thousands and reducing the population needed to work the fields and serve in the legions. At one point, the empire nearly broke apart. A breakaway Gallic empire emerged in the west, while the Palmyrene Empire rose in the east under Queen Zenobia. For a time, it seemed the mighty Roman Empire might collapse completely. Yet Rome was not finished. A series of strong emperors would soon emerge to restore order and briefly revive the empire's fortunes. In the late 3rd century, the empire seemed close to collapse, but in 284 CE, a new emperor named Diocletian rose to power. Realizing the empire was too large for one man to govern, he introduced radical reforms to stabilize it. Diocletian divided the empire into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. Each half was ruled by an emperor called Augustus, with a junior emperor called Caesar to assist him. This system, known as the Tetrarchy, created 4 rulers to defend the empire's borders and maintain order. He also reorganized the provinces, strengthened the army, and imposed strict economic controls to fight inflation. Although his reforms restored temporary stability, they also made the empire more rigid and authoritarian, with heavy taxes burdening ordinary citizens. When Diocletian retired in 305 CE, civil wars erupted again as rival generals fought for control. From this chaos emerged Constantine the Great, one of Rome's most important rulers. Constantine reunited the empire under his rule and made 2 momentous decisions. First, he moved the capital from Rome to a new city called Constantinople, located on the crossroads of Europe and Asia. This strategic location gave the empire better defense and access to trade routes, and it would later become the heart of the Byzantine Empire. Second, Constantine embraced Christianity. In 313 CE, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance throughout the empire and ending centuries of persecution against Christians. By the end of his reign, Christianity had grown from a small sect into a faith closely tied to imperial power. Constantine's reforms and new capital gave the Eastern Roman Empire strength to endure for centuries. Yet in the West, old problems of invasions, economic decline, and political corruption continued to grow. After Constantine's reign, the Roman Empire was permanently divided into East and West. The Eastern Empire, ruled from Constantinople, grew wealthier and more secure, but the Western Empire faced growing threats that it could no longer control. Barbarian tribes pressed against Rome's frontiers, driven by migration, hunger, and the westward movement of the Huns from Central Asia. In 376 CE, the Goths crossed the Danube River seeking refuge inside Roman territory. When mistreated by corrupt officials, they rebelled, and in 378 CE, crushed a Roman army at the Battle of Adrianople, killing Emperor Valens. This defeat shocked the empire. For centuries, Roman legions had been nearly invincible, but now the barbarians were growing stronger while Rome grew weaker. The Western Empire also suffered from political chaos. Emperors rose and fell rapidly, often controlled by powerful generals or palace officials. The economy continued to decline, cities shrank, and many provinces stopped paying taxes or raising troops for the central government. In 410 CE, the unthinkable happened. Led by Alaric, the Visigoths marched into Italy and sacked Rome itself. For the first time in nearly 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen to a foreign enemy. Though the empire survived for a few more decades, its power was broken. More barbarian groups carved up the western provinces, Vandals seized North Africa, Franks settled in Gaul, and Saxons invaded Britain. The Western Empire now ruled little beyond Italy itself. Finally, in 476 CE, a Germanic leader named Odoacer deposed the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus. He declared himself king of Italy, sending the imperial regalia to Constantinople. Historians mark this date as the official fall of the Western Roman Empire. Yet the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, continued for nearly 1,000 years more, preserving Roman laws, culture, and traditions until the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The story of Rome is one of the most fascinating in human history. From a small village on the banks of the Tiber River to the capital of the world's greatest empire, Rome rose through ambition, innovation, and military power. It gave the world roads, aqueducts, literature, law, architecture, and a vision of order that shaped centuries of civilization. But Rome also reminds us that no empire lasts forever. Corruption, economic decline, political chaos, and relentless invasions slowly tore down what centuries of conquest had built. The Western Roman Empire fell in 476 CE, yet its legacy lived on in the Byzantine Empire and later in the Renaissance, when scholars rediscovered Roman art, science, and literature. Even today, echoes of Rome remain in our languages, laws, architecture, and political systems. The story of Rome's rise and fall is not just about emperors and battles. It is also about human ambition, resilience, and the fragility of power. It asks us to think about the forces that build civilizations and the dangers that can destroy them. If you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps bring more incredible stories from the past to life. Stay tuned for our next video as we continue exploring the mysteries and lessons of history.